Good evening and welcome to this Cabinet meeting by virtue of the Local Authorities and Police and Crime Panels Regulations 2020. The requirement for public meetings to be made accessible to the public remains, and a link to the virtual meeting is available on the Council's website in the usual live meeting link page, which if you're watching this, you've already found. If a connection to a member is lost during this meeting, I will stop it so that we can enable the connection to be restored. If the connection cannot be restored within a reasonable time, the meeting will proceed, but the member who is disconnected will not be able to vote on the matter under discussion, as they would not have heard all of the facts and debates. Should any aspect of the external link fail, I may call a short adjournment of up to 5 minutes or so to determine whether the connection can quickly be re-established. If the connection is not restored within that time, the meeting will be adjourned and any further business will not proceed until another time and date. Firstly, can I ask Cabinet members to notify the meeting of their attendance? Firstly, Councillor Shah.
Present.
Councillor Jabbar.
Present.
Councillor Mushtaq.
Present.
Councillor Chatterton.
Present.
Councillor Chowan.
Present.
Councillor Roberts.
Present.
Councillor Brownridge.
Present.
Councillor Moores.
Present.
Thank you, everybody's here. Turning to the agenda, once the report has been introduced and discussed, I'll ask each member to indicate their agreement or not by roll call, like the one that we've just done. Firstly, apologies for absence. I have not received any. Item 2 is urgent business, and I haven't been notified of any urgent business that needs to be discussed. Item 3, declarations of interest. I'll pause for a moment now to allow any members to notify the meeting of any interest they need to declare. I take the silence to mean that there are no interests to declare. Item 4 is public question time, and I have not been notified of any questions. Item 5, the draft minutes of the Administration Budget Performance and Value for Money Select Committee held on the 28th of January 2021. We only need to note these without a roll call, so I'll pause for a moment to allow anybody to challenge those minutes if they wish to. I'll take those as agreed. Similar approach to item 6, which is the draft minutes of the Opposition Budget Performance and Value for Money Select Committee, which was held on the 9th of February 2021. If anybody does not agree to those minutes as a correct record of that meeting, please indicate now. No, so again, those are noted and are accepted. Moving on to item 7, where we do start having to take roll calls. Item 7 is the Revenue Monitor and Capital Investment Programme 2020-21, month 8, November 2020. Councillor Jabbar.
Thank you, Chair. So before I talk about the Pacific report, which is the month 8 update, I'd just like to inform Cabinet about the full suite of papers that's before you actually have been to the Performance and Value for Money Select Committee on the 28th of January this year, and they've looked at the content of the reports and they've actually commended all the reports to you without any amendments. Obviously, Chair, in the finance world, lots of things are happening very, very quickly. So there's been some changes since these papers were presented to PBFM. For example, the final local government finance settlement, which was approved on the 10th of February by Parliament, has been incorporated in these papers. But actually, in terms of changes, there's been very minor changes to the overall suite of papers that are here for consideration. So then moving on to then, Chair, looking at item 7, which is the revenue monitor. So obviously we presented regularly reports to Cabinet, giving you update on the financial position of the council regularly. And I think the key point to make is that this is the last paper you'll see for this financial year. And it's actually important in relation to dealing with the budget for next financial year. And I just wanted to pick up 4 key points very, very quickly. Firstly, it confirms the pressure in this financial year and that needs to be addressed for 2021-22. The trends at month 8 are in the similar, it's basically same as previous month. The overall projected outturn of 8.3 million is very close to the figure that we presented last month, which was 8.5 million. The variance is 8.3 million pounds split into two, basically COVID and business as usual. The two areas presenting an adverse is basically business as usual remains adult social care and children social care, both driven by demand, extra demand that both services have received. They are offsetting business as usual overspend across all other portfolio areas. So basically, although there's been overspend in the two areas I mentioned, there's been underspend in other areas, and that's helped to deal with the overspend. However, as the report advises, it is anticipated that the 8.3 million pound can be addressed by additional contribution from partners, further grants funding from government, continued management action to control expenditure. This will be important as it will protect the council reserves. The month 9 report presented to Cabinet in March will provide an update position. And then I just wanted to touch very quickly, Chair, on the capital programme. So the expenditure has been reprofiled, leaving an anticipated 81.013 million capital expenditure in 2021, which then provides the starting point for 21-22 to 2025-26 capital strategy and programme. I'm happy, Chair, to take any questions colleague may have.
Thank you, Councillor Jabbar. So this is, a routine report that comes even when we've not got the budget cabinet meeting, but thank you for talking us through it in slightly more detail than we usually hear. Councillor Jabbar's invited questions or comments from cabinet members should they have any, and I see no indication that they do, and so we can take this item to the roll call vote. So are the recommendations at the front of the report accepted? Councillor Shah?
Agreed.
Councillor Jabbar?
Agreed.
Councillor Mushtaq?
Agreed.
Councillor Chatterton?
Agreed.
Councillor Chowan?
Agreed.
Councillor Roberts?
Agreed.
Councillor Brownridge?
Agreed.
And Councillor Moores?
Agreed.
And my vote is in agreement with the recommendations too. Item 8 then, Council Tax Reduction Scheme 2021-22. Councillor Jabbar again.
Thank you, Chair. So basically, we're required to produce a council tax reduction scheme to support residents who qualify for assistance in paying the council tax. And there's also a requirement each year to review that. We've done the review, Chair, and what we're recommending is to stick with the current scheme, which is giving a maximum support of 85% of Band A council tax. If I can just, Chair, mention that obviously during the COVID period, we have seen a very significant increase in the number of people claiming for council tax reduction. And what we've seen is actually a figure of 13,959 people who have received the benefit in January 2021. And there was also 15,952, sorry, in April, sorry, can I just give you that again? So in April 2020, we saw 13,959 people claiming CTR, and that figure jumped to 15,952 in January. So obviously we've seen a significant increase, but we've not changed the scheme. We're going ahead with the current scheme, which is being very supportive of the people who are in the low income bracket of well, basically low income bracket. Yeah. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jabbar. So I recall when the council tax reduction scheme was given to local authorities to administer locally, and it was done so at the same time as funding was reduced for the council tax reduction scheme, which meant that many people on the lowest incomes had to pay council tax for the very first time, having never had to pay it before. We came up with a scheme in Oldham that paid 80% of Band A, and then we were able to revise that upwards to 85% to be slightly more generous than it previously was. But ideally, we would like to take the lowest income households out of paying council tax altogether. I've been really pleased that again we made some changes in the last couple of years that mean that it extends to more people because more people are eligible. But the truth is, as Councillor Jabbar has outlined, that it has been extended to more people this year, not because we've changed the eligibility criteria, but because more people have fallen on hard times due to the coronavirus crisis. So there are many more people that are having to use the council tax reduction scheme, which is having an impact on our financial position. And I think it is very admirable that we're admiring ourselves. I think it is positive that we, as a council, we've been able to retain the same level of help for people, despite many more people now having to draw on the support that the council tax reduction scheme brings. And I know that there are other authorities in Greater Manchester, not least Tory/independent controlled Bolton, which is making their council tax reduction scheme less generous and requiring the poorest in Bolton to pay more, and that's a decision made by the Tory administration, which is propped up by independents there, and I think it's shameful, and I'm glad that we've not done that here. So thank you, Councillor Jabbar. Does anybody else have any comments or questions on this report? No. Okay, so this again is a roll call vote item. Councillor Shah, do you agree to the recommendations?
Agreed, Chair.
Councillor Jabbar?
Agreed.
Councillor Mushtaq?
Agreed.
Councillor Chatterton?
Agreed.
Councillor Chowan?
Agreed.
Councillor Roberts?
Agreed.
Councillor Brownridge?
Agreed.
Councillor Moores?
Agreed.
Okay, and my vote is in agreement with that as well too. So there we go. Item 9, Revenue Budget 2021-22 and Medium-Term Financial Strategy 21-22 to 23-24. Councillor Jabbar to introduce.
Thanks, Chair. So obviously, Chair, this is the main report of the evening, and it deals with council tax increases and also how we managed to produce a balanced budget for next financial year. I just wanted to touch on the sort of main factors in considering the budget settlement for next year. So firstly, we have to take the position of month 8. Secondly, the final local government final settlement, which was approved, as I said earlier, 10th of February. Also, the February 2021 COVID-19 funding for local government in 2021-22. Policy paper issued again on the 10th of February. Local policy issues, including council tax intention, but is also influenced by all the other reports on the agenda. So as well as these 4 items, Chair, there is interrelation between all the other items on the agenda before Cabinet tonight. So the report concentrates on the budget position for 21-22 and delivering a balanced budget, but also looks ahead over the medium term to 23-24, a shorter time scale than usual due to the uncertainty around COVID and the future government funding intention. The initial budget gap for 21-22 was estimated at 23.251 million. The report outlines how this then moved during this year to a projected budget gap of 30 million and then to a final budget gap of 27.623 million, excluding the technical adjustment of 25.456 million relating to the awarding of business rate reliefs. Clearly, budget settlement for 21-22 has been influenced by COVID. This has made an already challenging position even more difficult. I'm sure, Chair, you'll agree that over the last 10 years, Oldham councils has to reduce its budget by over £216 million. So we started off with a very difficult position, and then that's been made even more difficult with COVID coming along. A key determinant of the final budget position has been the announcement of government grants, including the final settlement and the COVID policy paper. However, reflecting the announcement of the spending review in November, the government has given a single year funding settlement, which makes it difficult to plan for the future. I mean, normally we have at least 3 years spending review period. Sometimes we've had it for 5 years as well, Chair. So again, you can see our job has been made very difficult. The report outlines all the financial pressures and the various grants that the government is providing. There are some new ones specifically as a response to COVID, including the new local tax support grant and the local tax income guarantee. There's also 7.737 million COVID-19 expenditure pressure grant. This is to cover the early part of the 2021-22, after which the government expects the pressure to ease. The government has advised it will provide further support if necessary. One key change outlined in the report is the revision of the council tax policy. The referendum criteria was permitted an increase of up to 4.99%. That's making up of 1.99 for general and then 3% for other social care precept. This can be split over 2 years. So what's happened in terms of Oldham Council, Chair, is that we've very reluctantly looked at all the difficult financial position that we've got, and we decided to go for an increase next year of 2.099%. Sorry, 2.99%. So that's breaking up of 0.99 for general and 2% for adult social care. And we don't want to do this, but we have to do it, Chair, just because we have to produce a balanced budget. But despite this increase, I just like to make the Cabinet aware that it's the lowest council tax increase in anywhere in Greater Manchester. And this has been done, Chair, reflecting on the situation, the financial situation of many of our residents in the borough. So taking all the issues into account, then the council tax proposal into account, estimates have been revised to show up to the position of 27.623 to be addressed. So basically, that's the issue that we needed to address, because as I've mentioned, there's a technical adjustment of 25.456 million. Mr. Chair, basically the grants that was given to businesses for not paying their business rates. So it came to us, we then credited that to people's account. So in the end, we were left to deal with a situation of finding that 27 million. So what we did, we took forward budget reduction proposals, which amounted to 8.92 million. There were in total 43 budget proposals. And again, Chair, you'll agree that there were a lot of difficult decisions being made when we considered each of the 43 proposals. We also used what's known as the flexible use of capital receipt of £2 million, and then general reserves of 16.703 million to produce the balanced budget. I think, Chair, in terms of the consultation, we had an extensive consultation, which is on all the proposals, and this is public consultation I'm talking about, as well as discussing it with our staff. And the details of the consultation is attached on Appendix 12 of the report. I mean, clearly, in terms of the main report, Chair, I've touched on the key points. There's lots of, well, the report is very comprehensive, and I think in conclusion, I would say that it is evident that the financial challenge is significant. There's a lot to do, but we have managed to produce a balanced budget. And I'm sure this pressure that we have as a council will continue certainly into the future years unless government recognise the difficulty that we're in respect of the continuous cuts that's been handed over and also the impact of COVID-19. So my ask would be that government does look at council as a whole when the Chancellor is looking at the budget on the 3rd of March and give us the money that we need to provide vital services, which is very, very important to all communities across the country. I'm happy to take any question, Chair. I'm sorry that's quite long, but wanted to get the main points in respect of my introduction to the report.
Thank you, Councillor Jabbar. Before I, make comments that I'd wish to make, I'll ask if there's anybody else on the call that wishes to comment on this. No, so I imagine everybody's saving their comments for the council meeting that we will have, that we send these recommendations to next Thursday. I will say something at this point. So originally we were expecting to have to take £23 million out of our budget in the form of cuts. But unfortunately, because the government did not make good on its promise to reimburse us the cost of responding to COVID, that has had to be revised upwards to £28 million. So we were having to make cuts in the beginning, and we have to make deeper cuts to the very people that have been supporting our communities through this crisis. Now, the government at the moment is trying to reap the benefits of the successful rollout of the vaccine programme. And the vaccine programme has been incredibly successful. It's probably the most successful part of the COVID response. And the reason it's been so successful is because it's the element that's had the least to do with the government. It's been being administered by the NHS, administered by local authorities like ourselves, and it's been put in the hands of professionals who know what they're doing, and people who are closer to the communities that we're seeking to roll it out into. And so we need to truly expose the failures of the government and the way that they have absolutely betrayed the very people who have stepped up and supported the most vulnerable and those who have fallen on hard times during this crisis. And I'm sure there'll be much more of that at the council meeting next week. I am pleased, however, to be able to put forward a council tax increase, which is the lowest in Greater Manchester. Whilst the government has trumpeted the amount of money that it is making available for local government to spend, 70% of that hinges on us putting council tax up to 5%. It's not real money that they've provided. It's the money of hard-working people out there in Oldham that they want local authorities to take off them as a result of their failure to fund us properly. And we're refusing to do that here in Oldham because we know that many of our households are really hard pressed, and we don't want to hit them with a 5% council tax increase. It will mean that there's some challenges for us here at the council, and there are some things that we won't be able to do that we would like to, but we believe that with this budget we've got the balance right. And so I will leave my comments there and say much more at the council meeting next Thursday, as I'm sure Councillor Jabbar and colleagues on the call will. And if nobody else wishes to come in, then we'll move into the roll call vote. I've not prompted anybody to wave or say anything. So first of all, Councillor Shah, do you accept the recommendations?
Accepted, Chair.
Councillor Jabbar.
Agreed.
Councillor Mushtaq.
Agreed.
Councillor Chatterton.
Agreed.
Councillor Chowan.
Agreed.
Councillor Roberts.
Agreed.
Councillor Brownridge.
Agreed.
And Councillor Moores.
Agreed.
Okay, and I'm in agreement too. So we can move on to the next report of our Budget Council meeting, which is the Housing Revenue Account Estimates 2021 to 22 to 2025-26 and proposed outturn for this financial year. Councillor Jabbar.
Chair, this one's going to be dealt by Councillor Hannah Roberts.
Apologies, your name was against it in my notes, but it should not have been.
Yes,
Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. Thought I might give Abdul's voice a rest.
Thank you.
So I'm presenting the Housing Revenue Account estimates and recommendations in this report. The key recommendations to note are the ones around the proposals for rents. So the proposal in the report is to increase rents for all properties by 1.5%, which is in line with the government's recommendations for how we should calculate this. And to as a mitigating factor in taking into account some of the comments that Councillor Fielding's just made, we propose to again peg service charges and not to raise those at all, and that the concierge charges, so that's the extra charges that people pay for the care that they receive in extra care housing, that we will fully recover actual costs. So those are the key recommendations in the report. The report also describes the how the balances in the housing revenue account and provides forecasts for expenditure over the coming years. This year's accounts include payment for the 17 homes that we have brought on Primrose Bank, which are all now, I think, let. We've certainly taken ownership of all of the properties, and the properties have, I believe, been met. There was extremely high demand for them, and it's been a difficult process to decide who should receive the tenancies of those properties. Just to note as well that the Council's intention is to make full use of the available resources in the housing revenue account to support our housing strategy. We are bringing forward, which has already been approved in principle, a programme of building properties across the borough on pockets of housing revenue account land that we still have available to us. And we are also going to be contributing from the housing revenue account to the council's ambitious programme to deliver creating a better place and a substantial amount of housing in the town centre. And finally, I think just to note as well that the housing revenue account will be contributing towards the Green Homes grant that we agreed at yesterday's cabinet, where we will be installing insulation on the Crossley estate and on bungalows in Chadderton. No, sorry, not on solar panels on bungalows in Chadderton, and additional insulation on some of the homes on Primrose Bank. So I think that while it might look like a steep decrease from the current balances to the projections, that is because we want to put this money to good use to try to deal with the housing crisis that we have in the borough.
Thank you, Councillor Roberts. I have nothing further to add to that report. Does anybody else? No, thank you for talking us through that. We will take the roll call vote on the recommendations now. Councillor Shah.
Agreed, Chair.
Councillor Jabbar.
Agreed.
Councillor Mushtaq.
Agreed.
Councillor Chadderton.
Agreed.
Councillor Chohan.
Agreed.
Councillor Roberts.
Agreed.
Councillor Brownridge.
Agreed.
Councillor Moores.
Agreed.
And I'm in agreement too. Item 11, Capital Strategy and Capital Programme 21-22 to 25-26. Councillor Jabbar.
Thank you, Chair. So this report consists of a summary paper with the detailed capital strategy set out at Appendix 1. It's very much in this style of the previous years, and as there is a requirement for the Council to consider a capital strategy, it complies with all the necessary code and practice. The strategy covers the period 2021-22 to 25-26, a 5-year timeline, but it also looks forward at the summary level of a further 10-year from 2026-27 to 2035-36. As set out in the report, the total spending of 341 million is planned from for the next 5 years, primarily funded by government grants and prudential borrowing. The spending in next financial year is planned at 84.9 million, again primarily funded by government grants and prudential borrowing. A final issue to mention is the flexible use of capital receipt strategy, which is included at Appendix D of Appendix 1. Using the use of capital receipt will be financed transformational activity and help balance the budget for 2021-22 revenue budget. I'm happy to take any question, Chair, on this item.
Do any members wish to ask any questions or make any observations on this item? Councillor Roberts.
Yeah, I'd just like to ask a question about whether this paper includes what was our previous allocation around pothole funding, and whether or not we, as well as many other local councils, have just had the funding for potholes reduced by the Tory government.
Yeah, it does include that. We have had recent notification, Chair, for the highway maintenance grant, and unfortunately there's been a substantial reduction. I think the reduction is about 30%. So you're right, we have seen a reduction at a time really when the budget should have been increasing to make sure that we at least have a chance to repair our roads that has not been repaired for a long time, and there's a backlog of repairs in the borough. We've seen a reduction in the cost. I mean, I haven't got the exact figure to hand, Chair, but I'm happy to provide that to Cabinet after the meeting.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Jabbar. An important question. The figure will be appreciated, I'm sure. Right, okay, I have nothing to add on the capital strategy in this meeting, so I will move to the roll call vote. Councillor Shah.
Agreed.
Councillor Jabbar.
Agreed.
Councillor Mushtaq.
Agreed.
Councillor Chatterton.
Agreed.
Councillor Chowan.
Agreed.
Councillor Roberts.
Agreed.
Councillor Brownridge.
Agreed.
Councillor Moores.
Agreed.
And I agree too. Item 12, Treasury Management Strategy Statement 21-22, including the Minimum Revenue Provision Policy Statement, Annual Investment Strategy and Prudential Indicators. Councillor Jabbar.
Thanks, Chair. I'll be brief on this one. This is a highly technical report. It's primarily to comply with the various regulation and best practice codes that we have. I can tell you, Chair, that we comply with everything, and our treasury management is excellent. And report, every year the external auditor gives us a very positive comment about the way that we manage our treasury here in Oldham. I don't want to add any more to that because it's all there in the report. Again, I'm quite happy to take any question any colleague have.
Thank you, Councillor Jabbar. Anybody on this? Nope, no, nothing from me. Okay, thank you, everybody. I know that these reports have gone through the mill and everybody's seen them in great detail already. So we're going to see them all again at the council meeting. So I appreciate that not anybody is desperate to say anything tonight. Moving to the vote then, Councillor Shah.
Agreed, Chair.
Councillor Jabbar.
Agreed.
Councillor Mushtaq.
Agreed.
Councillor Chatterton.
Agreed.
Councillor Chowan.
Agreed.
Councillor Roberts.
Agreed.
Councillor Brownridge.
Agreed.
Councillor Moores.
Agreed.
And I agree too. Thank you very much. Right, statement of the Chief Financial Officer on reserves, robustness of estimates and affordability and prudence of capital investments. This is over to you, Anne, our Director of Finance.
Thank you, Chair. So this report has been prepared because there is a need to comply with Section 25 of the Local Government Act 2003, which requires the Section 151 officer, which is me in the context of Oldham Council, to report on the robustness of the estimates made for the purposes of the revenue budget calculations and the adequacy of the proposed reserves. So this report ensures that we comply with those requirements. There is no set format for the insurance statement, but the report follows the style that we have used here in Oldham for a number of years. It considers the level of balances that are recommended to support the budget and an approach to determine those balances looks at 11 areas of risk, and these are set out in detail at appendices 1 and 2 of the report. The report also considers the level of earmarked reserves and therefore links very closely to the budget report and the reliance on the reserves to support the budget. There's a section on the robustness of the estimates which highlights how the estimates have been prepared and that the issues and all the issues that have been considered, and particularly looks at the affordability and prudence of the capital estimates, and clearly we have just considered the capital programme and linked to that the Treasury Management Statement. There is a detailed commentary on financial resilience, and this is particularly important at this time because, as you will be aware, a number of local authorities in recent weeks have had to seek support from central government in order to support their financial position in this financial year, and also to enable them to present and consider a balanced budget in for 21-22. So members are therefore advised that I am mindful and aware of all of the importance of financial resilience in the context of advising on the management of the finances of the council. Since this report was actually issued, the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy has produced its financial resilience indices for 1920, and that indices was in large part prompted by the financial difficulties that Northamptonshire County Council got into a couple of years ago. In the context of the indices, it does not highlight any challenges, any particular challenges for Oldham Council at the end of 1920, but of course it is a backward-looking document as such, and therefore to some degree doesn't reflect the current financial challenges that local authorities in general are facing. Overall, I am able to advise of the robustness of the estimates and to give members assurance about the budget for 21-22 and also the capital programme. The report recommends balances to increase to £15.6 million, which is up from the level that they are held at in 2021, which is 15.1 million. And that clearly is to enable and support the financial resilience of the council. And the ability to deliver that level of balances will be considered when we prepare the final accounts for 2021. Thank you, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Anne. Do any members have any questions or observations they want to make? No, it was fairly self-explanatory, thanks. Well, we'll move straight to whether we accept the recommendations in the report or not. So my windows are not skipping between them, but I should know who you all are anyway. Councillor Shah. Councillor Shah.
Sorry, Chair, it just froze my mute button. But yeah, happy to accept Anne's report. Thank you.
Very good. Councillor Jabbar.
Agreed.
Councillor Mushtaq.
Agreed.
Councillor Chatterton.
Agreed.
Councillor Chowan.
Agreed.
Councillor Roberts.
Agreed.
Councillor Brownridge.
Agreed.
And Councillor Moores.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Full agreement there, Anne. Wonderful. And that concludes the business of Cabinet tonight. All the items on the agenda have been dealt with. We move forward to our council meeting next week, where we will discuss the budget in more detail. So I'll see most of you before that, but if I don't see you before then I'll see you on Thursday the 4th. Take care, everybody. Have a good evening.
Bye.